Every single day, thousands of people react without thinking. They snap at loved ones, make impulsive decisions, or feel completely overwhelmed by stress, and most don't even realize the cost. Lost opportunities, broken relationships, unnecessary anxiety, it all adds up. Now here's the thing, this doesn't have to be your story. Emotional stability, the ability to stay calm, centered, and clear-headed under pressure, is not something you're born with. It's a skill, and the science shows it can be trained. Neuroscience proves that your brain can literally rewire itself to respond differently to stress, panic, and uncertainty. But only if you start practicing the right methods today, not tomorrow. Imagine walking into any high-pressure situation, work meetings, arguments, deadlines, and feeling completely in control of your reactions. Imagine your mind being steady when chaos surrounds you, like a calm lake untouched by the storm. That's not a dream. That's achievable, and the earlier you start, the stronger you get. Every minute you wait is another minute you let emotions dictate your choices. Every day you ignore training your mind is another day of stress dictating your life. But the moment you take control, you create an advantage few people ever achieve. A mind that can stay calm when everything else is falling apart. In this video, I'll show you the exact science-backed exercises that can help you train emotional stability from scratch. Simple, daily steps that, if practiced consistently, will change how your brain reacts to stress and give you a clarity and confidence that feels almost unfair compared to everyone else still struggling. So don't let this pass. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs this, because the time to take control of your emotions is now, not later. Your future calm, focused self will thank you. Chapter 1. The calm is trainable. Calm is not a personality trait. It is not luck. It is not something you either inherited or missed out on. Calm is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained under pressure. Emotional stability is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to keep your hands steady while your nervous system screams. It is the ability to choose your next move when your body wants to react. If you have ever promised yourself you would stay composed, then watched yourself snap, spiral, shut down, or overthink anyway, this is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you have been untrained. Think of a pilot flying through turbulence. The aircraft shakes. The alarms may beep. The air turns unpredictable, but the pilot doesn't take it personally. They don't argue with the sky. They rely on instruments, routines, and practiced responses. Your emotions are turbulence. They are information and energy moving through you. The science of calm is learning to fly the plane while the cabin rattles. You don't wait for smooth air to become skilled. You become skilled so turbulence doesn't decide your behavior. Most people treat calm like a reward. They tell themselves they'll be calm when the deadline is over, when the relationship is stable, when the bills are paid, when people stop being difficult, when their mind finally cooperates. But that is backwards. Calm is a prerequisite. Calm is the foundation that allows you to handle deadlines, relationships, money, and conflict without turning every challenge into a personal emergency. The brain doesn't rise to the level of your intentions. It falls to the level of your training. And right now, whether you realize it or not, your nervous system has been training every single day. Every time you doom scroll to avoid discomfort, you train avoidance. Every time you explode to release tension, you train explosion. Every time you overthink to feel safe, you train overthinking. Every time you numb out with food, alcohol, entertainment, or busyness, you train numbness. Training is simply repetition under emotion. Your body learns what you do most, not what you want most. The good news is that the same mechanism that wired you for reactivity can wire you for stability. Neuroplasticity doesn't care if the habit is helpful or harmful. It responds to practice. A young doctor once described her first night on call in an emergency department. It was loud, relentless, and chaotic. Patients came in waves. Alarms rang. Senior staff moved fast. She felt her throat tight. Her hands trembled as she tried to place an IV. She kept thinking, I can't do this. A nurse noticed and said something simple, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The nurse didn't deny the chaos. She didn't demand that the doctor feel confident. She gave her a rule of engagement. One breath, one step, one decision. The doctor didn't become calm because the night became easier. She became calm because she anchored herself to what she could control. By the end of the shift, the chaos was still there, but she was no longer drowning in it. That is the core shift you are going to make in this audiobook. You will stop negotiating with your feelings. You will start training your response. Emotional stability is not a mood. It is a system, and systems can be built. To build calm, you need to understand what you are calming. Under stress, your nervous system is designed to protect you. It speeds up your heart, tightens your muscles, narrows your attention, and prepares you to fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. This is not weakness. It is biology. The problem is that modern life triggers ancient survival circuitry constantly. A tense email can feel like a threat. An awkward conversation can feel like danger. A social rejection can feel like exile. Your body reacts as if your survival is on the line, even when your life is not. Training calm means teaching your body the difference between discomfort and danger. There is a simple moment you can start practicing today. It's the moment after the trigger, before the reaction. Most people think there is no gap there. They think they are simply like this. But there is always a gap, even if it is small. That gap is your training ground. The goal is not to become a saint who never feels anger, anxiety, or sadness. The goal is to stretch the gap so you can choose. A few seconds of choice can save relationships, protect careers, and stop you from turning one bad moment into a bad day. Imagine you're holding a glass of water at arm's length. The water is your emotion. At first, it's easy, but as time passes, your arm shakes. The water sloshes. If someone bumps you, you spill. Many people live like this, holding their emotional load far from the body, tense and rigid, trying not to spill. Calm training is learning to bring the glass closer, to stabilize your grip, to stand with a firm posture, to stop treating every bump like a catastrophe. You still carry the water, but you carry it with skill. Here is your first practical tool, and it is almost insultingly simple. Name what is happening in your body. Not a story, not blame, not a debate, just a label. Tight chest. Hot face. Clenched jaw, racing thoughts. This is not poetic, it is neurological. When you label sensations, you recruit parts of the brain involved in regulation and meaning-making. You stop being pure reaction. You start becoming an observer. In that small act, you shift from being inside the storm to holding an umbrella within it. And you will pair that with a second tool: lengthen the exhale. When you extend your exhale, you signal safety to your nervous system. You don't need a perfect breath. You need a deliberate one. Inhale normally. Exhale a little longer. Do that twice. In a meeting, in traffic, in your kitchen, in the silence before you answer a message that could start a fight. This is not a relaxation trick. This is a way of telling your biology, stand down, I'm in charge. Calm isn't soft. Calm is command. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now we go deeper, because calm is not built only in the moment of crisis. Calm is built in the ordinary hours when nothing dramatic is happening, when you are alone with yourself. The nervous system learns from what you repeatedly expose it to. If your days are filled with constant stimulation, constant urgency, constant multitasking, and constant self-criticism, you are training your body to live in a permanent state of threat. Then you wonder why you can't relax. You can't relax because you haven't practiced safety. This is where discipline enters. Not the discipline of punishment, but the discipline of repetition. Choose one small daily ritual that signals stability. It could be a 5-minute walk without your phone. It could be sitting on the edge of your bed and taking 10 slow exhales before you begin the day. It could be drinking water in silence before you speak to anyone. It could be stretching for 3 minutes when you get home to tell your body the hunt is over. These are not cute wellness habits. These are neural training sessions. You are teaching your system that it is allowed to downshift. Real calm people aren't calm because they never face pressure. They're calm because they don't leak their power into unnecessary battles. They know that every argument, every impulse purchase, every late-night rumination, every bitter replay of a conversation is a withdrawal from the account of their attention. They protect that account. They invest it. They decide what deserves their energy. That decision is a form of self-respect. You are going to build a calm identity the same way you build a strong body. You don't lift once and expect transformation. You lift consistently and let biology respond. Emotional stability is the strength training of the mind and nervous system. Your reps are the moments you pause instead of react. Your sets are the days you follow your calming ritual even when you don't feel like it. Your progressive overload is staying steady in slightly harder situations over time. And just like physical training, it's not glamorous. It is quiet. It is repetitive. It works. A man once told a story about learning to drive on icy roads. The instructor took him to an empty parking lot after a snowstorm and said, "We're going to skid on purpose." The man panicked. Skidding was the thing he feared, but the instructor insisted. They accelerated, turned, and the car slid. Then the instructor calmly guided him to steer into the skid, not away from it. After a few rounds, the fear reduced. The body learned. The mind understood. When the real skid happened months later on a highway, he didn't freeze. He had training. Emotional stability is the same. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You train in controlled ways so that when real life skids, you don't lose control. So here is the standard you adopt from today onward. You do not measure your progress by whether you feel calm. You measure it by whether you respond with skill. You can be anxious and still be precise. You can be angry and still be respectful. You can be tired and still be disciplined. Calm is not the absence of waves. Calm is learning to surf without drowning. As this chapter closes, let the idea settle. You are not condemned to your default reactions. You are trainable. Your nervous system can learn new patterns. Your mind can become a tool instead of a trap. And your future self is built by what you practice when it would be easier to react. What moments tend to hijack you most, and what do they feel like in your body when the hijack begins? What would change in your life if you could stretch the gap by 5 seconds before you respond? What daily ritual could you commit to that would teach your system safety, not just survival? And when the next trigger arrives, will you let your old training drive? Or will you take one deliberate breath and start becoming the kind of calm that cannot be shaken? Chapter 2. The nervous system switchboard. Last time, you heard the truth that changes everything. Calm is not luck, it is training. You began noticing the gap after a trigger, naming what happens in your body and lengthening the exhale to reclaim command. You also chose the kind of small daily ritual that teaches your system safety instead of non-stop survival. Now we take that foundation and build the machine that runs beneath it. Emotional stability is not a moral achievement. It is electrical, chemical, mechanical. Your nervous system is a switchboard, constantly deciding whether you are safe enough to think clearly or threatened enough to react automatically. When it flags danger, it doesn't ask for your opinion. It shifts power away from long-term planning and toward immediate defense. That is why, in the heat of stress, you say things you don't mean, forget what you know, and make choices that don't match your values. The goal is not to shame yourself for being human. The goal is to train your switchboard so it stops pulling the alarm for every inconvenience. Picture a smoke detector in a kitchen. It exists for a reason. But if it goes off every time you make toast, you don't conclude the house is doomed. You recalibrate, you move it. You improve ventilation. You stop waving a towel at it while yelling at the ceiling. Many people do the emotional version of waving a towel. They argue with feelings. They blame others. They force positivity. They tighten their jaw and try to outmuscle biology. But the alarm is still screaming because the system still believes there's smoke. Your nervous system's job is to predict. It scans the world and your internal sensations. Then it guesses what's about to happen next. If your past taught it that conflict leads to abandonment, it will treat a difficult conversation like a cliff edge. If your past taught it that mistakes lead to humiliation, it will treat a small error like a public execution. If your past taught it that rest equals laziness, it will keep you restless even when you're exhausted. The switchboard is not evil. It is overprotective. It thinks it's saving you. There's a moment you can learn to catch that overprotection before it becomes your personality for the day. The earliest signal is rarely a thought. It's a body shift. Your shoulders creep up. Your tongue presses against your teeth. Your vision narrows. Your stomach tightens. Your breathing gets shallow. And then the story arrives to justify it. They don't respect me. I'm failing. This is going to go wrong. I can't handle this. The story is second. State comes first. If you try to reason with the story while your state is still on red alert, you will lose. You will produce more thoughts, more arguments, more worry, more urgency, and you will call it solving. Calm training is learning to regulate state before you negotiate meaning. You don't have to be serene. You have to be steady enough to choose skillfully. A firefighter once described what surprised him most in his early training. He expected the focus to be on heroics, strength, and speed. Instead, instructors drilled one thing again and again: control your breathing and your attention. In a burning building, panic is contagious. When one person's breath turns frantic, everyone's mind shrinks. So they trained a kind of internal rhythm. Breath steady, eyes scanning, hands deliberate. He said the calm wasn't a feeling, it was a procedure. The procedure created the feeling later. You need a procedure too, not a complicated one. A reliable one you can use anywhere without anyone noticing. Start with orientation. Under stress, your attention collapses onto the threat. Orientation is widening the lens. You deliberately notice where you are, feel your feet, sense the room. Let your eyes land on an object and describe it silently. A door frame, a mug, a window, a patch of light. This is not pretending everything is fine. This is proving to your switchboard that you are not trapped inside a single scary thought. You are here in a real environment with options. Then regulate your breath the way a professional regulates a tool. Not dramatic, not forced. Just a longer exhale repeated until your body stops acting like it's being chased. Your breath is the steering wheel. You don't need to steer hard. You need to steer consistently. Then choose the next smallest effective action. Not the perfect action, not the action that fixes the entire future, not the action that makes you feel invincible. The next smallest effective action. If you're angry, the smallest effective action might be delaying your response by 10 minutes. If you're anxious, it might be writing down the next step instead of rehearsing every worst-case scenario. If you're overwhelmed, it might be clearing one surface, sending one email, drinking water, and starting again. This approach feels almost too basic until you understand what you're actually doing. You're teaching your system that intensity does not equal emergency. You're breaking the link between sensation and impulsive behavior. You're turning the switchboard from an unreliable alarm into a disciplined instrument. There is a reason people relapse into old reactions when they're tired, hungry, lonely, or overcaffeinated. Your switchboard becomes jumpy when your baseline is depleted. Emotional stability isn't only built during conflict. It's built through the boring choices that keep your baseline strong. One of the most underestimated practices in calm training is the micro-recovery. Not a vacation, not an hour-long meditation session that you will never maintain. A micro-recovery is a 90-second downshift that happens before you crack. Think of it like pressure release on a pipe. Without it, the system bursts in the weakest spot. A teacher I once heard about used a simple ritual between classes. 30 students would leave, 30 more would arrive, and chaos could build all day. So he created a tiny reset. When the room emptied, he stood at the door, relaxed his shoulders, exhaled slowly 3 times, and unclenched his hands. That was it. He didn't do it because he was spiritual. He did it because he was strategic. By the afternoon, he was still firm, still kind, still in control. The students didn't realize his authority was built in those quiet resets. His nervous system did. You can do the same in your life. In the car before you walk inside, in the bathroom at work, in the pause after you close your laptop. Micro-recoveries turn days that would normally grind you down into days you can handle with strength. Now, let's talk about the trap that keeps people from practicing this. They wait until they feel calm to do calm actions. That's like waiting until you feel fit to exercise. You practice calm actions while you are not calm. That is the point. The training is not theoretical. It is built in real moments with real emotion. There's another trap that looks intelligent, self-analysis without regulation. You can explain your childhood, name your patterns, identify your triggers, and still blow up in the same ways if your switchboard is still hair trigger. Insight is useful, but it is not a substitute for nervous system training. Calm comes from repetition, from procedure, from doing it again, even when your mind insists it won't work fast enough. You also need to understand a hard truth. Some environments constantly hit your system with threat signals. A workplace where you are humiliated. A A relationship where you are punished for honesty. A routine where you never sleep. A life where you never stop consuming information designed to make you angry and afraid. Calm training is powerful, but it is not a license to stay in conditions that repeatedly injure you. Sometimes the calmest move is to change the inputs. Inputs matter. What you watch, what you listen to, who you spend time with, what you eat, how you sleep, how you speak to yourself. Your switchboard learns from all of it. When you choose better inputs, you reduce the number of false alarms. And when alarms still happen, your procedure gives you a way through. Here is the identity shift you adopt now. You are not someone who tries to stay calm. You are someone who trains calm. Trying is fragile because it depends on feelings. Training is reliable because it depends on practice. Training makes calm part of who you are, not something you hope to access under stress. As you move through your next days, notice how often you confuse urgency with importance. Your nervous system loves urgency because urgency feels like control, but urgency steals precision. Calm creates precision. Calm lets you hear what someone is actually saying. Calm lets you see the next right move. Calm lets you hold power without leaking it. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now, before you step into the next chapter, let the procedure settle into your bones. Orient to the real room, lengthen the exhale, choose the smallest effective action. Then protect your baseline with micro recoveries and better inputs. You are not becoming calm by wishing. You are becoming calm by rehearsing a different response until it becomes automatic. What are the earliest body signals that tell you your switchboard is flipping into threat before the story even starts? Where in your day do you keep pushing past the point where a 90-second micro recovery would prevent a blow-up later? Which inputs keep your system on edge? And what would it look like to reduce them with discipline instead of negotiating with them? When the next trigger arrives, will you reach for analysis and excuses, or will you run the procedure and prove to yourself that you can lead your state instead of being dragged by it? Chapter 3. The story you tell yourself. You've already started treating calm like a skill instead of a mood, and you've practiced leading your state instead of being dragged by it. You've begun noticing the first body signals, widening your attention, lengthening the exhale, and choosing the next smallest effective action. You're also building a stronger baseline so your system stops pulling the alarm for every inconvenience. Now it's time to address the other half of the equation, the story that turns sensation into suffering. Your mind is a meaning machine. It does not merely report reality. It interprets it. It predicts it. It dramatizes it. It fills in missing information with whatever seems safest, even when safest means worst. When your nervous system tilts into threat, your mind starts looking for evidence that the threat is real. That is not because you are negative. It is because your brain is designed to keep you alive, not to keep you peaceful. If you want emotional stability, you need to stop treating every thought like a command. A thought is not a verdict. A thought is not a prophecy. A thought is a sentence produced by a brain that is trying to reduce uncertainty. Sometimes it's accurate. Sometimes it's useful. Sometimes it's neither. The calm mind is not the mind with fewer thoughts. It's the mind that knows which thoughts deserve attention and which ones are just noise from an overprotective system. Here's what most people do when a stressful thought shows up. They either fuse with it or fight it. Fusion means the thought becomes identity. I'm going to fail becomes I am a failure. They're upset becomes I'm in danger. This is hard becomes I can't handle hard things. Fighting means you argue with the thought like it's an enemy. You wrestle it. You demand it disappear. And in the process, you give it more oxygen. There's a third option, and it's the option that builds stability. You observe the thought, then you choose. You let the mind speak, and you decide whether to follow. This sounds simple until you realize it requires a new relationship with your inner narrative. Most people have never learned that they can hear a thought without obeying it. Imagine you're standing on a sidewalk watching buses go by. Each bus has a sign on the front, "Not good enough." Something will go wrong. They don't respect you. You're behind. You have to fix this now. Most people jump onto the first bus that arrives and let it drive them wherever it's headed. Calm training is learning to stay on the sidewalk. You can read the sign. You can acknowledge the bus exists. But you do not have to get on. This is not about denying problems. It's about refusing to turn every problem into a personal apocalypse. A project manager once described how he used to react before important presentations. The night before, his mind would start building an entire film about failure. He would see himself stumbling on words, losing credibility, being exposed as incompetent. He would rehearse arguments, imagine criticism, and then lie in bed exhausted, convincing himself he was preparing. In truth, he was practicing panic. One day, after a particularly brutal week, he tried something different. He wrote the thought down exactly as it appeared. "I'm going to embarrass myself tomorrow." Then he wrote a second line beneath it. "That is my brain trying to reduce uncertainty." He didn't argue with it. He didn't try to replace it with fake positivity. He treated it like weather, present, real, and temporary. The next day, the anxiety still showed up, but it didn't own him. He delivered the presentation with a steady voice because he stopped turning the thought into a life or death command. You can do the same. You don't need a dramatic mindset overhaul. You need a simple protocol for mental stories. First, separate observation from interpretation. My chest is tight is observation. This means I'm doomed is interpretation. My manager hasn't replied is observation. They're angry and I'm about to get fired is interpretation. Emotional stability grows fast when you stop confusing interpretation for fact. Second, give the thought a title instead of a throne. When a recurring story shows up, name it like a familiar character. The catastrophe story, the not enough story, the control story, the rejection story, the urgency story. You are not mocking yourself. You are creating distance. You are reminding your system. This is a pattern, not a prophecy. Third, ask one disciplined question. What is the next useful move if I refuse to obey this story? Not the next perfect move, the next useful one. If the story is shouting, "Fix everything now," the useful move might be writing a short plan and sleeping. If the story is shouting, "Avoid the conversation," the useful move might be sending a simple message to schedule a time to talk. If the story is shouting, "Prove yourself," the useful move might be doing the task quietly without performing for anyone. The mind will protest. It will insist the story is true because it feels true. But feelings are not proof. Feelings are signals. Your job is to read the signal without letting it hijack the mission. This is where a lot of people make a mistake. They assume calm requires good thoughts. They try to replace every negative thought with a positive one. That creates a fragile calm because it depends on mental control you won't have under pressure. Real calm is sturdier. Real calm says, a scary thought is here and I can still act with precision. That is power. There's a practical exercise that trains this quickly. Set a timer for 2 minutes once a day. Sit still. Let thoughts arise. Each time a thought appears, label it softly in your mind. Planning, judging, remembering, worrying, rehearsing, comparing. Then return to a physical anchor like the sensation of your breath or the feeling of your feet on the ground. You are not trying to win. You are training the skill of returning. That skill becomes your emergency brake when stress tries to run away with you. Another practice is the written reset. When you feel mentally flooded, take one page. Write the story exactly as your mind is saying it, no editing. Then draw a line. Below it, write only observations you can verify right now. Not interpretations. Not predictions. Just facts. Then write one sentence. The next useful move is, and finish it with something small and concrete. You are taking the wheel back from your imagination. You also need to understand that your brain is biased toward negative predictions during uncertainty. That doesn't mean you're pessimistic. It means your brain is doing what brains do. It is easier to survive a threat you anticipated than a threat you ignored, so the brain would rather overwarn than underwarn. The cost is chronic tension. You pay that cost every time you treat the warning as truth. So you're going to start training a new habit, proving safety with evidence. Not by forcing comfort, but by collecting reality. When you're about to assume the worst, pause and ask, what do I actually know? What do I not know? What is a plausible alternative explanation? This is not naive. This is disciplined thinking. You are refusing to let a stressed nervous system write your life story. There's another layer to this. Emotional stability is also about values. A calm person doesn't merely regulate, they aim. They decide what kind of person they will be under stress, then they act accordingly. Values are your compass when the mind is noisy. In a tense moment, you can ask, what would courage look like here? What would respect look like here? What would patience look like here? When you choose values, you stop letting mood dictate behavior. A woman once described a pattern she hated in herself. During conflict, she would either go sharp and cutting or go silent and disappear. Later, she would regret both. She decided to train one value, steadiness. The next time a disagreement started, she felt the old heat rise in her chest. Her mind offered the familiar story, attack or escape. She didn't try to feel calm. She simply chose steadiness as the target. She slowed her voice. She said, I need a minute to think and I want to stay respectful. She stepped away briefly, returned, and spoke clearly. The conflict didn't vanish, but she didn't abandon herself. That was the win. That was emotional stability, staying aligned with values while the body wants to sprint. You are building the same capability. The story will still show up. The sensations will still surge. But you will no longer confuse internal noise with external truth. You will treat the mind like a tool, not a tyrant. Near the end of the day, you can strengthen this training with a simple review. Ask yourself, where did I get on a bus today? Where did I stay on the sidewalk? Where did I obey a story that cost me peace or precision? Where did I choose the next useful move anyway? The goal is not perfection. The goal is pattern awareness and consistent reps. Your mind learns what you practice. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Let this land with force. You do not have to believe everything you think. You do not have to argue with every fear. You can observe, label, and return to what is useful. You can choose values over urgency, reality over prediction, procedure over panic. The calm you want is built every time you refuse to hand the steering wheel to a stressed-out story. What is the most common story your mind tells when you're under pressure, and how does it try to control your behavior? When you notice that story next time, can you separate what you can verify from what you're only imagining? What would change if, instead of chasing certainty, you chose one small useful move and executed it with discipline? And in the moments when your mind is loudest, which value will you practice so your actions stay steady even when your thoughts are not? Chapter 4. Calm under pressure with other people. By now, you've stopped treating calm like something you wait for and started treating it like something you practice. You've learned to lead your nervous system with a simple procedure, and you've begun separating raw sensations from the stories your mind tries to crown as truth. That foundation matters most when the pressure isn't coming from a deadline or a thought, but from another human being standing right in front of you. Nothing tests emotional stability like relationships. A calendar can't judge you. A traffic jam can't twist your words, but people can. People can misunderstand you, interrupt you, criticize you, disappoint you, and trigger old wounds you didn't even realize you still carried. And when that happens, your switchboard doesn't just light up, it flares. You can be calm alone and still get hijacked in conversation. That's not failure, that's the next level of training. Here is the hard truth. Most conflict is not about the topic, it's about state. Two nervous systems collide and both are trying to feel safe, respected, and in control. Words are just the surface. Underneath is a battle for emotional footing. If you want stability, you stop trying to win the surface argument and start managing the state beneath it. Imagine a thermostat and a thermometer. A thermometer reflects the room. If the room is hot, it reads hot. If the room is cold, it reads cold. A thermostat changes the room. It influences temperature not by shouting at the heat, but by holding a steady setting and responding with precision. In relationships, most people act like thermometers. They mirror whatever energy they're given. Someone comes in sharp, they go sharp. Someone gets anxious, they get anxious. Someone withdraws, they withdraw. Emotional stability is becoming the thermostat. You hold your setting, you influence the room. This doesn't mean you become passive, it means you become deliberate. It means you stop donating your nervous system to other people's moods. There's a reason arguments escalate. One person's tension becomes the other person's tension, and the cycle feeds itself. A raised voice triggers defensiveness. Defensiveness triggers contempt. Contempt triggers withdrawal. Withdrawal triggers pursuit. Pursuit triggers more withdrawal. The topic gets lost and the nervous systems take over. The science of calm in relationships is learning to interrupt the loop before it becomes a wildfire. The first move is the same as before. Notice your body early. The earlier you catch it, the less dramatic your intervention needs to be. When you feel your chest tighten, your jaw clench, your voice speed up, your mind start writing speeches, that is your signal. Not to attack, not to shut down, to regulate. Then you do something most people never do. You slow your output. You lower the speed and volume of your voice, not to sound nice, but to stay in control of your physiology. When you speak fast and loud, you don't just communicate urgency to the other person. You communicate danger to your own nervous system. You push yourself further into fight mode. A steady voice is not weakness. It is leverage. A negotiator once explained how he handled hostile meetings. He didn't rely on charm. He relied on tempo. When someone came at him aggressively, his instinct was to match them. He learned to do the opposite. He spoke slower. He asked one clean question at a time. He kept his shoulders down and his breathing unforced. The other person would often get louder, trying to pull him into the storm. He refused the invitation. Minutes later, the room would change. Not because the problem disappeared, but because the energy couldn't feed. He wasn't absorbing the emotion and throwing it back. He was containing it. That containment gave everyone else permission to think. You can train that. The moment you're tempted to make your point faster, slow down. The moment you want to win with volume, win with clarity. The moment you want to punish with silence, choose a clean boundary instead. Boundaries are calm in action. A boundary is not a threat. It is a decision about what you will participate in. Many people avoid boundaries because they fear conflict. Then they explode later because resentment built up. Emotional stability is refusing both extremes. You don't vanish. You don't detonate. You state your boundary with a steady nervous system. You can use simple language that doesn't invite debate. I want to talk about this, and I'm not willing to do it while we're insulting each other. I'm going to take 10 minutes to calm down and then I'll come back. I hear you. I need time to think before I respond. I'm not available for this conversation in the middle of the night. We can talk tomorrow. Notice what's missing. No accusations, no long defense, no courtroom speech, just a clear line and a calm tone. But here's the part people miss. A boundary is only real if you follow through. If you say you'll take 10 minutes, take 10 minutes. If you say you'll come back, come back. Reliability builds safety. Safety lowers threat. Lower threat makes real conversation possible. Some people will test you when you get calmer. They are used to you reacting. They are used to your urgency, your over-explaining, your emotional chasing, your quick apologies that aren't rooted in truth. When you stop performing those patterns, it can unsettle the relationship. This is where discipline matters. You don't return to chaos to make others comfortable. You hold the new standard calmly and consistently until your system and the relationship adapt. There's also a key idea that will keep you from wasting energy. Not every conversation is a collaboration. Some people are in problem-solving mode. Some people are in dominance mode. If someone's goal is to win, not to understand, then you can speak perfectly and still get nowhere. Emotional stability means you recognize what you're dealing with. You don't keep trying the same approach and calling it patience. You change your strategy. Sometimes the calm strategy is to postpone. This matters to me. Let's talk when we're both calmer. Sometimes the calm strategy is to narrow. We're talking about one issue, not 10. Sometimes the calm strategy is to exit. I'm going to step away now. Exiting is not abandonment when you name it and return as promised. Exiting is emotional leadership. Now let's address the shame that shows up when you do get triggered, because you will. Training doesn't mean you never lose your footing. It means you recover faster and repair cleaner. Repair is a superpower. Many people avoid repair because they think it makes them weak. In reality, repair makes you credible. Repair teaches your nervous system that mistakes don't equal disaster. Repair teaches other people that conflict doesn't have to end in punishment. Emotional stability isn't just staying calm. It's being able to come back to center after you wobble. A father once talked about how he changed the atmosphere in his home. He used to come back from work tense and short-tempered. Small things would set him off. His kids learned to tiptoe. One evening he snapped over spilled juice and he saw fear in his child's face. That moment cut through him. He didn't do a dramatic apology performance. He did a repair. He knelt down, softened his voice, and said, "That was my stress, not your fault. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm going to take a minute to calm my body and then we'll clean it up together." He walked to the sink, ran cold water over his hands, took slow exhales, and returned. The spill was still there, but the household felt safer. And over time, his kids stopped being afraid of his mood because he stopped making them responsible for it. That is the model. You take responsibility for your state without drowning in guilt. Guilt that leads to action is useful. Shame that leads to hiding is poison. You also need to understand emotional contagion. Humans are wired to synchronize. Your body reads tone, posture, micro-expressions. You can walk into a room and feel tension without a word being spoken. This is why your calm is not just for you. It's a signal to others. When you regulate yourself, you become a stabilizing presence. That presence can shift teams, families, friendships. Not by lecturing people to calm down, but by embodying a nervous system that isn't in emergency mode. Be careful with one temptation, using calm as a mask. Some people become calm as a way to avoid intimacy, to avoid vulnerability, to avoid hard truths. That is not stability. That is shutdown dressed in good posture. Real calm allows honesty. Real calm lets you say what needs to be said without turning it into a weapon. So when you speak, aim for clean truth. Clean truth is specific, not dramatic. It stays on the issue. It doesn't mind read. It doesn't globalize. It doesn't say you always and you never. It describes what happened, what impact it had, and what you want now. Clean truth is emotionally stable language. And remember, you cannot control the other person's reaction. You can only control your clarity, your boundaries, your repair, and your consistency. The goal is not to make everyone calm. The goal is to remain yourself in the presence of their storm. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now take this into your real life. The next time tension rises, notice the body signal early. Regulate first, then speak. Slow your tempo. Hold a thermostat setting. Use boundaries that are simple and followed by action. Repair quickly when you miss the mark. Choose clean truth over dramatic story. This is how you stop being pulled into other people's emotional weather. This is how you become steady enough to lead, love, and work with strength. When you look back on your recent conflicts, where did you act like a thermometer, automatically reflecting the room, instead of a thermostat setting the tone? What boundary do you keep avoiding because you fear discomfort? And what would it sound like if you stated it calmly and followed through? When you get triggered, do you spiral into shame, or can you practice repair as a disciplined return to your values? And as you move through your next conversations, will you chase control through urgency, or will you choose calm, clear truth and become the kind of person whose presence makes stability possible? Chapter 5. The daily training that makes calm automatic. You've learned to catch the early body signals, run a simple regulation procedure, and stop handing authority to every anxious thought. You've practiced becoming the thermostat in conversation, setting a steady tempo, using clean boundaries and repairing instead of spiraling into shame. All of that is real skill, And now we lock it in with the part most people skip, the daily training that makes calm your default, not your performance. Emotional stability is built long before the trigger arrives. It's built in how you start your morning, how you transition between tasks, how you consume information, how you handle fatigue, and how you end your day. Your nervous system doesn't care what you believe about calm. It cares what you repeatedly do. If you want calm under pressure, you must stop living as if every hour is an emergency and then acting surprised when your body believes it. Think of calm like traction on a road. When traction is high, you can brake and steer without skidding. When traction is low, even small turns become dangerous. Your baseline is your traction. Sleep debt, constant stimulation, caffeine spikes, skipped meals, and unbroken screen time all lower traction. Then a minor stressor hits and you slide. You call it overreacting, but it's really physics. Train traction and you will be shocked by how much less effort it takes to stay steady. A high-performing athlete once described the difference between competition days when he felt locked in and days when he felt scattered. The difference wasn't mindset speeches. It was basics. On locked-in days, he ate predictably, slept enough, warmed up the same way, and avoided chaotic inputs. On scattered days, he woke up late, scrolled his phone for an hour, skipped breakfast, slammed coffee, and tried to force focus through intensity. He realized something that applies to everyone. The mind does not float above the body. The mind is carried by the body. If you want stable emotion, you build a stable platform. This chapter is about building that platform with disciplined simplicity. Start with the first 10 minutes of the day, not because mornings are magical, but because they set your system's starting temperature. If the first thing you do is inject urgency through messages, headlines, and notifications, you start in threat mode. Your nervous system interprets that as the world is dangerous and I'm behind. Then you carry that state into everything. Instead, take the first 10 minutes and give your switchboard a clear signal: I'm safe enough to choose. Sit on the edge of your bed or stand by a window. Feel your feet. Take 10 slow exhales, not to become peaceful but to establish leadership. Then decide your first smallest effective action for the day. One action, not a list. You're training your brain to move from state to action without spiraling through mental noise. Next, train transitions. Most people get hijacked in transitions because the mind hates unfinished loops. You finish a meeting, step into another task, glance at your phone, remember something you forgot, and your nervous system starts stacking stress without release. You don't need long breaks. You need clean handoffs. A clean handoff is 30 seconds. Before you move from one thing to the next, pause. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your hands. Exhale slowly twice. Name your state in one phrase: keyed up, rushed, irritated, foggy. Then choose the next smallest effective action. This is how you prevent stress from accumulating like invisible debt. Now let's talk about one of the biggest calm killers: constant novelty. Your brain is not designed to process endless new information without cost. Every scroll trains your attention to jump. Every rapid switch trains your nervous system to stay slightly activated. Many people say they have anxiety, but they are also training their system to be anxious with non-stop input. So you're going to create a simple rule. You decide when you consume. You don't let your phone decide for you. Choose 1 or 2 windows in the day for news, social media, or messages that don't require immediate response. Outside those windows, You protect your focus like it's a valuable asset because it is. This is not about being disconnected. It's about being in control of your attention so your nervous system isn't constantly reacting to someone else's agenda. You'll notice resistance immediately. Your mind will say, "What if I miss something?" That's the old urgency story wearing new clothes. Calm is choosing what matters, then doing it with precision. If something is truly urgent, it will find you. Most urgent things are just loud. Now add movement, not as fitness, but as regulation. You don't have to train like an athlete. You just need to move enough to tell your body it can discharge stress. The nervous system stores activation in the muscles. That's why your shoulders creep up and your jaw tightens. Movement is a release valve. A paramedic once explained his post-shift routine. He didn't sit down and replay everything. He took a brisk walk around the block before entering his home. 10 minutes. No phone, no music, just walking and breathing. He said it was like telling his body, the danger is over, the shift is done, you can stand down now. Without that, he brought the whole night into his living room. With it, he became present for his family. That's not a wellness tip, that's emotional leadership. You can create your own version, a short walk after work, a few minutes of stretching when you get home, a set of squats or push-ups between tasks. The point is consistency. When movement becomes part of your day, your nervous system stops carrying unused activation into your conversations and decisions. Now, train your tolerance for discomfort in small doses. This is the part that turns calm into steel. If you only practice calm when life is easy, your training won't hold when life is hard. But if you practice staying steady in controlled discomfort, your switchboard learns that intensity does not equal danger. Controlled discomfort can be simple. Ending a shower with 30 seconds of cooler water, taking a walk without entertainment, sitting with an uncomfortable feeling for 90 seconds without reaching for distraction, doing one hard task first instead of procrastinating. You're not punishing yourself. You're teaching your system, I can feel discomfort and still act with control. This is how you stop fearing emotion. Many people are not afraid of the event. They're afraid of what they will feel. They're afraid of the surge. They're afraid of not being able to handle it. So they avoid, they numb, they over-control. Calm training flips that. You become someone who can feel a surge and still steer. You also need a practice for the end of the day because emotional stability isn't only how you perform, it's how you recover. Recovery is where patterns are rewritten. If you end every night in overstimulation, late-night arguments, or frantic planning, you teach your brain that there's no safe landing. So create a shutdown sequence. It can be 10 minutes. Lower the lights, put your phone away. Write down 3 things: what you handled well, what triggered you, and the next useful move for tomorrow. Then do 10 slow exhales. You are not grading yourself. You are training your brain to close loops. Closing loops reduces rumination. Reduced rumination improves sleep. Improved sleep raises traction. Raised traction makes everything else easier. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this kind of training. Not the confidence of hype, but the confidence of someone who knows they can handle themselves. People often chase calm by trying to control the outside world, but the outside world is not controllable. The only reliable control is the system you build inside. And here's what will surprise you. Once your baseline improves, you won't need to use your emergency tools as often. You'll still have them. You'll still run the procedure when needed, but you'll be working with a calmer starting point. Your reactions will shrink. Your recovery will speed up. Your relationships will improve because you're no longer bringing leftover activation into every conversation. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now, let's continue. Now let this chapter become a contract with yourself. 10 minutes in the morning to set your state, clean handoffs between tasks, planned consumption instead of constant novelty, daily movement to discharge stress, small controlled discomfort to train tolerance, a shutdown sequence that closes loops and protects sleep. This is not complicated. It is disciplined. And discipline is what turns calm from an idea into an identity. As you step forward, notice what happens when you stop feeding urgency and start feeding stability. Notice how your mind behaves when your body is supported instead of depleted. Notice how your relationships shift when you arrive with traction instead of skid marks. Notice how much power you gain when you stop relying on willpower and start relying on systems. Which part of your day most reliably lowers your traction and makes you reactive? And what one rule could protect it starting today? Where do you need cleaner transitions so stress stops stacking in your body? What controlled discomfort could you practice in small doses so your system learns intensity without panic? And tonight, when the day ends, will you let your mind run loops until it steals your rest? Or will you run a simple shutdown sequence and prove to yourself that stability is something you build on purpose? Chapter 6. The person who cannot be shaken. You've built calm from the ground up, noticing the first body signals, running a procedure that regulates state before meaning, and refusing to obey every fearful story your mind produces. You've learned to become the thermostat with other people, using boundaries, tempo, and repair instead of detonation or disappearance. And you've designed daily training that strengthens your baseline so calm becomes automatic, not a lucky moment. Now we bring it all together into the final transformation, becoming the person whose stability is reliable, even when life is not. There is a difference between someone who can get calm and someone who is calm. The first can access it when conditions cooperate. The second carries it into any room, any argument, any setback, any season. They don't carry it because they are special. They carry it because they have made stability their standard, and they have protected that standard through repetition. This final chapter is not about being unbothered. It's about being unshakable in the ways that matter. It's about staying aligned when you're tempted to abandon yourself. Because when people say they want calm, what they often mean is they want relief. Relief is temporary. Calm is capacity. Calm is the ability to take a hit without losing your values. The world is not going to stop giving you reasons to react. There will be disrespect. There will be uncertainty. There will be loss. There will be days when your body is tired and your mind is loud. Emotional stability is not built by eliminating triggers. It's built by turning triggers into training. And that means you need one more mindset shift, the most powerful one. Every moment is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you pause instead of snapping, you cast a vote for steadiness. Every time you run the procedure instead of spiraling, you cast a vote for leadership. Every time you tell the truth cleanly instead of performing drama, you cast a vote for maturity. Every time you repair instead of hiding, you cast a vote for integrity. This is not motivational fluff. This is how identity is built. Identity is the sum of repeated actions. Think about a lighthouse. It doesn't chase ships to save them. It doesn't negotiate with storms. It stands. It signals. It holds its light regardless of weather. People trust it because it is consistent. Your calm is your lighthouse. It is not a weapon. It is not a mask. It is a signal you send to your own nervous system and to the people around you. I am steady enough to respond with skill. To become that lighthouse, you must stop using emotion as permission. Most people live on an emotional permission system. If they feel confident, they act. If they feel calm, they speak. If they feel motivated, they train. If they feel safe, they set boundaries. That system fails the moment feelings change. The discipline system is values-based. You act because it's aligned, not because it's comfortable. Calm is not what you wait for. Calm is what you demonstrate. There will be times you fail. You will say the sharp thing. You will avoid the hard conversation. You will get pulled into urgency and forget your procedure. That is not the end. That is data. The unshakable person is not the one who never slips. It's the one who returns quickly, repairs cleanly, and keeps training. One of the most stabilizing realizations you can have is this: you are not responsible for preventing every mistake. You are responsible for how you respond to mistakes. That response is where calm lives. A leader once described a crisis at his company. A major client threatened to leave. Rumors spread. People panicked. The team wanted instant certainty and loud reassurance. He felt the same fear they did. His body wanted to sprint, to fire off messages, to control the narrative. Instead, he did something that looked almost too quiet to be leadership. He slowed down. He gathered facts. He chose one smallest effective action: assemble the decision makers, define the immediate priorities, and communicate a clear plan with calm tempo. He didn't pretend the problem was small. He refused to make it chaotic. That steadiness kept the team functioning while the storm passed. Later, he said the hardest part was not the crisis. The hardest part was resisting the addiction to urgency, because urgency feels like leadership but often destroys it. That is what you will resist too. Urgency will try to recruit you. Drama will try to recruit you. Old patterns will try to recruit you. Your job is to say no, not with anger, but with procedure and standard. Here is the standard stated plainly. When you are triggered, you orient to the room. You lengthen the exhale. You name what is happening in your body. You separate observation from interpretation. You identify the old story without giving it a throne. You choose the next smallest effective action. You speak with a steady tempo. You hold clean boundaries and follow through. You repair when you miss. You protect your baseline with micro recoveries, planned consumption, movement, controlled discomfort, and a shutdown sequence. None of these steps require you to feel ready. They require you to be committed. This is what training looks like at the highest level: boring excellence. And there is one more truth you need to hear, because it will keep you from building calm for the wrong reasons. Calm is not just for your comfort. Calm is for your impact. When you are emotionally stable, you become more useful. You become more trustworthy. You become someone who can hold difficult conversations without collapsing. Someone who can raise children without making them responsible for your mood. Someone who can lead teams without spreading panic. Someone who can love without using volatility as proof of passion. Calm is not a private luxury. Calm is a public service. You don't have to become emotionless to become stable. You can feel deeply and still be disciplined. You can be compassionate and still have boundaries. You can be ambitious and still protect your nervous system. Stability doesn't shrink your life. It expands it because you stop wasting energy on internal battles that produce nothing. Now, as this audiobook ends, I want you to picture a moment in the future, a moment that used to break you. It could be criticism, conflict, an unexpected setback, a surge of anxiety late at night, a feeling of being misunderstood. In that moment, the old version of you would have fused with the story, reacted with urgency, and paid for it later. But the trained version of you does something different. You feel the surge and you don't fear it. You run the procedure, you slow your voice. You choose the smallest effective action. You hold your values, you repair if needed, and you move forward cleanly. That is unshakable. The world will still be loud. Your mind will still offer stories. Other people will still have storms, but you will no longer be ruled by whatever shows up. You will be guided by what you practice. Your calm will be earned, and that makes it real. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now continue by taking action. Not someday, not when you feel inspired. Today. Choose one ritual that sets your state in the morning. Choose one transition reset you will practice between tasks. Choose one boundary you will state cleanly the next time it's needed. Choose one repair you will make if you've been carrying regret. Choose one input you will reduce because it keeps your switchboard on edge. And when the next trigger arrives, treat it like training, not like tragedy. Because training is what makes calm automatic. Training is what makes you consistent. Training is what makes you credible to yourself. You are building a mind that does not need perfect circumstances to function. You are building a nervous system that can feel intensity without sounding the alarm. You are building relationships that can handle honesty without turning into war. You are building days that don't require you to run on adrenaline. You are building a life where you can face pressure with your spine straight and your breath steady. So let the final message be direct. Stop living as if your reactions are inevitable. They are practiced. And what is practiced can be changed. The person who cannot be shaken is not born. They are trained. As you walk away from this, what will be your procedure when the first body signal appears and the old story tries to take the wheel? What is the single daily practice that, if you did it consistently, would raise your traction and make calm easier across everything? In your relationships, where do you need to become the thermostat, holding steady tempo and clean boundaries instead of mirroring chaos? And when you fail, as every human does, will you choose shame and hiding, or will you choose repair and return, casting another vote for the calm, disciplined identity you are building on purpose?